Part 2, The Familiar Spirits and the Arrival of Big Boy. Also found in The Legend of Georgie Todd, a book available at Amazon.com by Frank T. Scruggs. Walking through the rain for about 45 minutes, Reverend Ford finally located a cabin deep in the Shelbyville woods. He and Georgie were to go fishing that weekend. Cold and wet from his walk in the forest during the sudden early spring storm left him in a really foul mood. His car stalled when he tried to drive the automobile across the flooded access road that led to the cabin area. Almost unprepared for the impromptu hike, Reverend Ford retrieved an Army surplus store poncho and large flashlight to find his way. Neither item did much to keep him dry. The small black kitten opened the door, and when Reverend Ford peered into the cabin, he loudly said, "Familiar spirits! Where is my friend George Todd?" The black cat, that was the size of the dog, said, "Your friend invited us in, and each of us told him we were waiting for Big Boy. When the werecat here showed up, he decided to leave of his own accord." Then there was a chorus of loud squalls and screams. All four black cats began laughing. Reverend Ford looked directly at the largest of the black cat, the werecat, who walked on two legs, and said, "Quiet, all you familiars. I'll warm myself by the fire, and then I will have something to eat." The bravado of the minister completely dismayed the cats. In the past, they encountered a few ministers, and most of them would turn tail and run. But here was one that was not fazed by them, even though they shifted into several hideous shapes as he warmed himself by the fire. When he had warmed himself enough and his clothes were dried by the fire, he ate the platter of fish and macaroni left by his friend Georgie. Reverend Todd munched on the cornbread, fried fish, and coleslaw as he continued to ignore the cats. When he finished his meal, he retrieved a cold bottle of beer from the refrigerator, slowly sipped the cold brew. "Wait until Big Boy gets here," said the large werecat. "You'll soon change your tune." Ignoring the demonic cats, Reverend Ford sat in a comfortable easy chair by the fire and soon drifted off to sleep. He was soon awakened by a large booming noise, ushering in three huge figures dwarfing the even 6-foot werecat. A large shadowy wraith and two slightly smaller wraiths entered and chilled the room despite the fire. A frigid air and wind circulated through the room as the largest of the wraiths spoke. "I am Big Boy," bellowed the wraith, "and this is my domain." The black cats and the two lesser rats all laughed with glee. One of the wraiths recognized the minister and said to Big Boy, "That man is Reverend Ford, Reverend Johnny Ford. He poses a danger to our kind, master." Big Boy laughed hollowly. "I have no fear of any puny human. I will crush you, eat your soul, and let my minions here feast on your flesh." Reverend Ford, unfazed by his threat, said, "If you were wise, you never would have entered this cabin." Reverend Ford stood up, looking at the hellish wraith right in the face, and said, "Unclean spirit, I prayed that you would show up here tonight so I might cleanse the earth of you finally." Reverend Ford tossed a handful of sea salt at the four black cats, who quickly were consumed by a bright blue flame. The lesser two wraiths cringed in fear at the feat just performed by the minister. Big Boy laughed and said, "Charlatan, I have no fear of you. I am power incarnate, and I care not for ministers, especially ministers who think they can defeat me. Ford, your breed have long deceived weak-minded humans and weak spirits. Many of your breed have embraced lust, envy, and greed. feeding my strength. I have walked the earth for 800 years, minister. I have seen your breed come and go, yet I am, and I still rule the ground on which I stand. Reverend Ford tossed another handful of sea salt at the race, who merely laughed. That trick will not work on us. We are power itself. Did you think you could dispatch us so easily as you did those familiars? Reverend Ford shook his head and simply said, No, that was just a test. Reverend Ford relished his opportunity to battle the wraiths that infested the cabin. The place reeked of sulfur, stale fried fish, and another pungent odor he could not identify. The three wraiths, shadowy entities, now stood in front of him, looming menacingly toward him, when suddenly the door burst open and Georgie entered the room. Reverend Ford, I got this. I don't need any special charms, prayers, or spells. I believe in myself and a higher power than those things what my grandparents called haints, said Georgie. He looked at the entities that did not seem as large as they were when they first appeared. Be gone, foul thing, said Georgie. Leave this place now, he commanded. Reverend Ford looked at the entities and marveled as they stiffened and turned into a shroud-shaped thing on the floor, then into dark dust. Georgie retrieved a broom and dustpan from a nearby closet, swept the dark dust into the dustpan, and dumped the debris outside, far from the cabin. What what was interesting, for the first time that night, there was no stench in the cabin. The room was once again feeling warm, cozy, and smelled fresh. Reverend Ford looked at his friend with admiration and said, Rapes are considered by some as the worst kind of haint, but when they're really nothing, Georgie. I admire how you came back and made a stand against those entities. The only power they have is the power granted by fear. When you released your fear and returned to this place, they were rendered powerless. The realization that they could do you no harm became your power. Spirits or ghosts, which include all haints, are just manifestations of our deepest fears. In some places where the fear is the greatest, become the most haunted places. He carefully considered Reverend Ford's words and thought, maybe that's why I've always been able to see and live with haints. There's always been a lot of fear in my life. More of these stories are available in the Haints of Georgie Todd, which is found in this book that is available at Amazon.com. Thank you for your time, your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the readings today. Goodbye.